Hello and welcome to the 19th episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. I'm very excited for this week's episode because I went into the film side of the industry. And I haven't talked a lot about that side of the industry because I've done mostly music industry stuff, but I also want to share this side of the industry because it also fascinates me. Now, Mr. Larry Katz has been in the industry for many years, well over a decade, and he has been a second assistant director for the majority of his career because upon joining the union, which is very common when working on huge blockbuster films such as the ones Larry's worked on, everything is very specialized, and unions are very specialized and make sure that the workers hired on the show and to work for the show are doing their jobs and not being overworked or underworked and underpaid and vice versa. Larry has been a second assistant director for nearly 20 years on numerous shows and movies. And he's worked on movies such as War for the Planet of the Apes. He's worked on Captain America, the First Avengers, X-Men First Class, Little Fockers, Better Off Ted, Eagle Eye. He worked on Cloverfield. He worked on Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. He's worked on Desperate Housewives, Fat Albert, and many others. So Larry's IMDb page, which you can read all about him and all of the stuff that he's done, will be in the show notes below. But we talk about how these opportunities came about, how he kind of got his start within this industry, if he's had supportive family, and kind of the struggles he's had, and even some of the things you can do if you're interested in getting into this side of the industry. So without me kind of babbling on and telling you all about Larry, I'm going to let Larry tell you about Larry. So I hope that you enjoy my conversation with the incredibly talented and very knowledgeable blockbuster second assistant director, Larry Katz.
My name is Larry Katz, and grew up in Miami, Florida. Definitely huge fan of movies, especially, I guess summer blockbusters were invented pretty much the year that I was born when Jaws came out. And, going to the movies became a real important, event in my family. And so, I grew up watching movies like Star Wars and Back to the Future and, Ghostbusters and blockbuster, cool movies like that, and really fantasized about, about working on movies like that someday, but didn't have any, indication of how to do that. And so, I went about my life and did the things that everybody was doing, kind of graduate high school and then go to college and study business. And, it wasn't a really good fit for me. I wasn't a good student at that moment because I was not engaged in what I was learning and it was boring. And so, I kind of just wrote myself off as being lazy, and then pretty much a friend of mine was going to Full Sail after I graduated from undergrad already and got a diploma and got a degree in business. A buddy of mine was going to Full Sail for RA and told me, you should come check this place out. I know that you are a huge fan of movies and, I think you would like it. And so came and did the tour and, I was sold. Here I can learn how to make this happen as a career. And then it was like, kind of like a light switch flipped for me, whereas it was so difficult to be engaged in what I was studying before. Now it was very easy and I was really into it, and I wanted to be the last person to leave school every day, and I wanted to be the first person there every day, and I wanted to, wanted more. I wanted to, I didn't care about waking up at 2 a.m. or standing up on my feet all day long. And so, it was then when I realized I was probably on the right track. Okay, business clearly was not the thing that was gonna, light my fire, but this now was something that I could really sink my teeth into. And so, learned all the basics and the fundamentals here at school, and took that and moved out to Los Angeles and, started the slow and arduous process of, getting my career moving. But, all the time I was really sure that this was the thing. And if I was able to persevere through the beginning when it was slow and, trying to get things started, I was pretty sure that I could make it happen.
You talked about kind of you didn't care if you were on your feet for 12 hours. You didn't care if you were there till 2 or 3 in the morning. You didn't care about really anything because you loved what you did so much that passion was just kind of fueling your adrenaline and everything. So where did you find that passion? Did you always kind of have it? Did you come from kind of a very creative family? Where did it come from?
No, not really. I mean, creative, not artistic, and that's how I would, describe myself as well. But, I don't know. It was a gear that, I didn't know I had until all of a sudden, I found this thing that I was interested in. I mean, I guess, you have to have a job. Everybody has to have a job. And so I found one that I was like, all right, I could really, get into this. This is what it entails to have this as a job. I would prefer to do something that I am passionate about, that's exciting, that, excites me for 15 or 16 hours a day than go to some office and do something that I don't enjoy for 8 hours a day. To me, it was like a no-brainer.
Right. And did you kind of have some skepticism from family, friends when you kind of like, I want to do this, I want to make movies? Like, because a lot of people don't really think like there's really an industry. They just kind of think that movies just kind of magically happen.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly nobody in my family had any context because nobody had ever done anything like this before. So they were cautious and skeptical, but I think when they saw all of a sudden for the first time in my adult life that I was engaged and that I was actually, working as hard as I can, I think they took it on faith that, they trusted me because they didn't have any frame of reference for what I was trying to do. So I think they were concerned, but they were super supportive.
That's always good because when you have the support, that makes the passion much easier. You kind of just put everything aside and just focus. So when you graduated school, you kind of discovered your passion. You knew that this is what you wanted to do for the rest of your life. Where did the opportunity just kind of start flowing from there, or did you have to continually seek them out? Tell us a little bit about that process because you always say, you got to have a job, you got to pay the bills. There's always something to buy. There's always something that happens. Tell us about that process and how you continually find work and how you did when you kind of first started.
Yeah, when you first start out, I mean, the truth of the matter is, for the kind of jobs that I was looking for, people only hire who they know. And that's the same as it is today. I've never got a job from sending a resume into the universe, without, sending it specifically to somebody, or I've never hired anybody. And when I do hiring on movies from just a resume that somebody sent me, like I had to, somebody had to tell me, look at this resume or put it on the top at least. And so, it was definitely difficult to get the ball rolling. And I didn't do as good of a job networking while I was here at the school. Now, as an instructor, I beat my students over the head with that they should be doing that every month, which is, maybe more important than the things that they're learning in their classes and labs that month is who did you meet this month? And it might be a student that's graduating, ahead of you, or it could be a grad who's back for BTS or whatever. I didn't unlock that when I was a student here. And so when I got out to LA, I quickly realized I didn't know anybody. And so now I was trying to play catch up and, I got a couple of little gigs and, I knew that I wasn't going to be lighting the world on fire right away. And so I had to, I needed a little help, maybe from my family to keep my, mouth above water at least, and some savings that I had, because I knew that it was going to be, a slow burn to start out with. And so finally, my first kind of bigger opportunity came through my stepsister's ex-boyfriend's former roommate's ex-boyfriend. So people hire who they know. So I had to see who do I know? Do I know anybody that knows anybody? And so that was it. That was an opportunity that I got, that way. And then once I was in the door, now I had exposure to people who would be able to hire me, moving forward. And so now that I got that door cracked open, I had to now prove myself. And it wasn't so much, with my skill level, which was low because I was brand new. You don't leave here with a high level of skill. You leave here with, exposure and some experience, but not enough to move the needle. And so, I kept employment coming with having a great attitude and never ever being late and being the first one that showed up every day and writing things down when I was told and never forgetting anything and following through and all of the kind of soft skills that show people that you're serious about doing this. And so, I coveted opportunities that I was given. And when I was given those opportunities, I crushed it, nailed it out of the park. So, my goal was, even if this isn't a job that I want to do the rest of my life, being an office production assistant or, drive a truck for craft service, even if that's not where I want to go, because I was given this opportunity, because I said yes, my job was at the end of the day that they're going to beg me to come back. Oh my God, you're the best office PA we've ever seen. You're the best garbage taker-outer in history, and we want you to come back. So, started to kind of build my reputation, started to get to know more people, and then, work started kind of exponentially growing from there.
Yeah, so when you talked about the networking part, and I've talked about it in previous episodes with numerous guests, because entertainment industry as a whole is all in who you know. You're going to get hired, and you said that. It's all in who you know. You're going to get your next gig by all in who you know. So when you're networking with people, what's the importance of networking with people in other industries? Say, for example, you might want to work on films, but it might be beneficial to network with people who are making games. It might be beneficial to network with people who are making music. They're in a recording studio, they're producing music. Or what's the importance behind that? Have you done that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, networking, and these are lessons I teach my students every day. Networking is not about meeting somebody who could do something for me. You got to forget that. That's not what networking is about. Networking is about creating relationships, and it's about I watch Survivor a lot, the TV show Survivor, and they, one of the first things they struggle with is lighting a fire. And so I watch them, and they get some kindling, like some coconut husk or something like that, and then they have this magnesium metal, and they scrape off some of the magnesium, and then they whack the magnesium with a knife and creates a spark. And one of those sparks is supposed to land in the kindling where the powder magnesium is, and hopefully that can create an ember. And if they get an ember, then they go crazy and they blow on it and they try to tend to it. And so to me, that's what networking is about. It's creating embers. And so if you want to light a fire and you have one ember, maybe that ember will start a fire. If you have 2 embers, you have 100% more of a chance of starting a fire. If you have 50 embers, there's a chance that none of those will start into a fire. But if you've got 50, you've got 50 more, chances than if you just had 1. And so networking is about creating these embers and then tending to the ember, because once you start it, the easiest thing is for it to go out. And so tending to it, if it was a fire, it would be blowing on it a little bit, giving it some oxygen. In the networking, realm, it's checking in with people. Hey, how's it going? Remember we met last week? Just wanted to touch base and say hi. And so you're creating relationships. And so I might meet a prolific game developer, and they're cool, and I enjoy talking to them. And then one of those times when I tend to my ember and I check in with them, hey, how's it going? Just want to touch base. Let's grab coffee. That might be the time that they're like, oh shit, I can't believe you just messaged me. I just met a movie producer randomly, and oh my gosh, you guys should meet each other. And so now that ember fell and started a fire, that you didn't even expect. And so, it never hurts to talk to anybody, that could be of interest, but always with the attitude, that we're creating a relationship. I'm not asking you for something. I don't know you. You don't know me. Maybe because we went to the same school, you're willing to answer me in an email, but it's about creating that relationship.
Right, and I had a perfect example of that today because I was working in the admissions lobby where all of the admissions reps are, and all the campus students come through the admissions reps before they start their degree program. And there was one rep that was telling me like, hey, because I was telling them I'm interested in moving to LA, I'm working on building a portfolio and all this stuff. And they're like, hey, do you know who this person is? Because their boyfriend is actually like a backup singer for America's Got Talent. You guys should meet. That's how these things start. And whenever she comes out, she's waiting to meet with the student. She'll come out and visit with me, and I'll spark a conversation with her. But, building that relationship with her is like, hey, I know somebody who's out there. I know somebody who's doing this. You should meet them. They probably have connections for you. So it was a perfect example. And I like that metaphor of you kind of starting the embers and striking that. That's a perfect metaphor. So when you first started out and everything's kind of taken going, you kind of probably got on cloud nine. I know I've been there before. You think that everything's going smoothly, nothing's going to happen. I'm unstoppable at this point. And then something happened. You come to a very quick realization that I screwed up. I messed up. I got to start over. I screwed up this relationship. What was one of those tough things that you dealt with or that happened and then you kind of learned from it? And how did you kind of deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I have a lot of practice, giving these lessons to my students, but, nobody in the entertainment industry, nobody's career is like a straight path. It's winding, and then you might go backwards a little bit, and then you go forwards, and then you fall down, and then you stagger off to the right and stagger off to the left. So, especially in film production, there's a lot of battlefield promotions. We're all kind of freelance. And so, if your boss doesn't show up one day, you might be elevated into that position. You got to be ready for that. And so one time I was offered a promotion and I said yes to it. But the reality was I was not prepared for it. And so I was not able to tread water. And I had to, very embarrassingly, kind of eat some crow and say, I shouldn't have said yes to this promotion because I'm not ready. And that was very embarrassing. And, it was tough and, some real humble pie to eat. And, it turned out okay. But, that's just one example. But, there's plenty of times that, things fell through or job opportunities that seemed promising didn't happen. And I said no to something and I should have said yes. There's a million things. But, it's never... It's not all great for anybody. I'm pretty blessed. It's been pretty dang good.
Right. It's not all colorful rainbows and sprinkles. It's absolutely not. Because I've even had some hard lessons. The 2 or 3 years that I've been out of school. It's like, wow, that's not the perspective that I had thought or had hoped for, and it's kind of a slap in the face. But that's the reality of the industry. That's the reality of life. So earlier this afternoon, I was kind of reading through your IMDb and kind of preparing myself for what you've worked on. And you've worked on some pretty massive titles like Captain America, X-Men, and I saw Fat Albert in there, War, Planet of the Apes, and plenty more. So tell us a little bit about how those gigs came about. They obviously came out through networking and everything. How did those, and what was it kind of like working on those films?
Yeah, definitely all through networking. I did not,
Send in a resume.
Did not send a resume to Captain America. It was all through prior jobs or recommendations or people that I met. I've worked with the same people over and over again on different projects, and so it was just carefully maintaining my reputation. Curating, that's the word I want to say. Carefully curating my reputation through all those years, and making connections with people. And there are people that you naturally click with, and you network more with people that you naturally click with. And so, I was really lucky to fall into a group and have friends, that I love to work with, and will recommend me, and even contemporaries who. We recommend each other. Well, you can't get, Greg, here's Larry, or, whatever. And so, a lot of those gigs came through those ways. And, Captain America came through, literally my buddy Greg, who got another project, and I replaced him on that one. X-Men was just, a guy that I worked with on 6 or 7 other projects, and Planet of the Apes was a combination of Captain America and other things, and so everything's all pretty connected in my career. And from the kid watching Back to the Future and Star Wars to now standing on the set of these major summer blockbusters, it's like very satisfying. And at the time I'm working, it's hard and stressful, and I'm tired. And then quickly, when it's over, it seemed like it was not that bad, and it was awesome, and I love talking about it and being able to reflect back on it. It's great to reflect back on it and not have to stand there, for 18 hours.
Yeah. So when you're standing on those sets, is it kind of that realization of like, what, this is going to make hundreds of millions of dollars, or hundreds of millions of people are going to see this, or have been anticipating this movie for years? What's that feeling like? Like you're actually working on this movie?
I don't. My brain never really goes there. It's just so satisfying to do exactly what you set out to do, and just selfishly as a fan, and I think I guess I think how jealous some of those people would be, and how blessed I am, to get the opportunity to be there and see it get made. And then how excited I am to see it when it's finished, because, I was concerned when I got into this that I wouldn't be able to watch movies the same way anymore. That I would think about, there's it's fake, and there's a guy with a microphone standing right over there. And, that didn't happen at all. I could still watch a movie and get totally immersed in it and not even think, even if it was me standing off over there, I wouldn't think, oh yeah, I was standing there, So, I think about what it's going to feel like for me, a year later or whatever, to watch it, and how exciting that's going to be. And the money, I'm not specifically involved in the budgets, by design. I don't want to have that part of, be part of that part of the film production. And so, I'm aware of the money that we spend in my department, but, I just think about it as a fan, I guess, for the most part.
When you're working on these films, you have multiple different. Sometimes you had assistant director. You've said second assistant director. Can you break down some of these different roles that you've worked and what their titles are, and maybe kind of clean up the gray area for somebody like me who's not involved in that side of the industry and that music, and maybe somebody who is trying to do something but they don't really understand, like, hey, I want to be a second assistant director. Like, what does that mean? What does that entitle?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the movies that I work on they sign contracts with all the different movie unions. And so because of the union oversight, at my level of film production, everyone has like one specific lane that they stay in. So I got into my guild, known as the Directors Guild of America, in 2002. And since then, I'm an assistant director. It's not like I can do different things on different movies. So I'm an AD, and so there's usually a first AD, and then a second AD, and then a second AD are kind of like the three main players in that department. And so in pre-production, when we first get the script, the first AD will break the script down scene by scene. Each scene requires certain elements that we'll need when we shoot those scenes, when we actually film it. And then the first assistant director, once he or she has done that, will now organize a schedule. And it will become apparent, okay, these scenes they share elements. So we should shoot them at the same time. It'll be efficient to shoot these scenes at the same time. So the assistant director builds the schedule in pre-production. And then meanwhile, we're testing everything, every stunt, every special effect, every costume is tested and, tried on. And then, by the time that we go to shoot, now the first assistant director and me and the other assistant directors are now just keeping everybody on that schedule that we created, early on in pre-production. And then, a really big part of my job is working with the extras. So, in all those movies, you might see a shot and there's Captain America talking to, to Peggy or whatever, but in the background of the shot are 200 soldiers doing stuff. Okay, Joe Johnston, the director, doesn't have anything to do with those 200 soldiers. And there might be Jeeps driving around in the background. There might be, any number of activities happening back there. And so I get to choreograph all of that. So, that's one of my, kind of favorite parts of my job, because now, stuff that I do is on screen of the movie, of every movie that I've ever worked on. I can watch it and say, I demonstratively contributed to this frame. Like that car, I told it to go. These people, I told them to walk there, So I like that part of my job a lot.
And you've had a lot of roles over the many years that you've been in the industry. What is kind of your favorite role? And is there a specific movie that kind of comes to mind? Like, I really had a blast at that movie.
Well, I haven't had too many roles. Since 2002, I'm an AD. I can't do anything else. I'm not allowed to do anything else. In big budget movies, everyone is very specialized, like very departmentalized. If the director says, hey, can you guys move that tape recorder 3 inches to the right? I know what a tape recorder is, and I know what 3 inches is, but it's not my job. I have to call somebody over who the union says is allowed to move that tape recorder 3 inches to the right. So that's how specialized things are, So I've always been, doing the same role, and it's great. It's exactly, what I wanted to do. I recognize, even when I was a student here at Full Sail many years ago, that this is the role that I want. And so, I think Night and Day was pretty awesome with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, because I got to live in Spain for like 3 months, and we got to recreate the running of the bulls. So, that was a pretty amazing experience. But, definitely got to live out my dreams pretty much.
I guess I didn't realize how specialized like being in a union was. And I have family that have worked in unions, and I guess I've never really done a lot of research in it, and I haven't had to deal with them a lot. But that's amazing how it has to be so scripted.
Yeah.
You have to be so in a lane.
Yes.
That you can't even move a tape recorder.
Nope.
Because that's not your job.
And it makes sense. The union would say, hey, if you need someone to move that tape recorder and the guy who's supposed to do it is busy, you should have hired another guy who's allowed to do that. This guy is not allowed to do it. Also, what that person who's specialist in set dressing, which is what that tape recorder would be known as in that context, they might know what I don't know, that 3 weeks ago when we did that shot, the tape recorder was over here. So I can't, now move it over here, and it ruins it, something that we already shot. So, there's reasons why it makes sense, but it is pretty silly.
Right. It is pretty silly, but it's understandable, like you said. So you dived a little bit into like what you do as the job as an assistant director, second assistant director. Can you dive a little bit more into like kind of a day in the life? Like if you got hired to do the next movie, what would kind of be like from this first day to kind of the last day, or even like when you're at peak producing, everything's going?
During the day, it's about, just making sure that all of those elements that I told you, making sure that they're all accounted for. And those include actors, extras, vehicles, props, set dressing, all that stuff. So in the morning, making sure that the actors are getting ready and that, that whole part of the process is happening. Making sure that the camera is there and that it's getting set up and that the timing works out, that when the camera's ready, the actors are ready. So that happens in 2 different places. And so, my department has oversight over all of that to make sure that it's happening. And then, just the logistics throughout the day to make sure that we have all of the things. Also obligations to the producers as far as paperwork for things that they have to pay for and keep track of. They're doing a hot cost budget at the end of every single day to make sure, where we stand budgetarily on a daily basis. So a lot of that information, I'm getting information from different departments and compiling it so that we're able to, resolve the budget every day. It's kind of hard to explain, man. You'd have to come hang out and check it out.
Right,
but,
definitely.
It's dynamic, and, a lot of people say second AD is the most difficult job on the set. Mostly second ADs say that, but, I'm kind of like the hub at this middle of the wheel, and all the spokes go out, but everything goes through the hub before it goes down the other spokes. So I'm like in the middle of it. And so, as a fan of movies, that's what I wanted. I want to know everything about everything. And normally, if you work in the camera department, you don't know what wardrobe is up to. If you're a grip, you don't know what the script supervisor is doing. In my job, just because I'm kind of nosy and, want to be a know-it-all, I have to know everything about everything, So I've always liked that part about my job.
I mean, you've only done that one kind of assistant director. You're doing what you love now. Hopefully you do till you retire. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years being in one position? There's still, I'm sure every set you go on or everybody that you meet, you're always learning something.
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely.
how to be a better assistant director.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's the skill set and then there's the people skills. And I mean, a film crew, on any given day, we might have 300 people, and I'm the hub at the middle of this tire of all of those people. And so it's really, learning how to deal with all kinds of different people. And, a lot of them are artistic and thin-skinned and, need a lot of care, in order for us to get what has to be done. And so it's a lot of, learning to deal with people and different kinds of people and different, personalities and all that stuff. And, there's so many different scenarios that can happen on a film set. I think it took me 10 years working almost every day on set before I could feel comfortable that I've really seen just about everything once at least. You know what I mean? And so that, confidence, kind of built when I realized, okay, I think I've seen it all at least one time.
Mm-hmm. And then it continues to build, like, I haven't seen that before.
Then they threw new stuff. Then you go on Planet of the Apes, and it's, a whole nother language, motion capture. So we're taking this technology that's fairly new, and we're combining it with old technology of filmmaking. So, that was a cool kind of late in my career lesson in a whole nother way of filmmaking. So yeah, there's always stuff to learn. Always.
And I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about like the networking aspect. I know you had spoken about when the students come in for the behind the scenes tour and they're really doing a lot of research on Full Sail. They're really kind of honing in on their dreams and their craft. And you were telling the students how you're here working at Full Sail because of the flexibility that they've given you. And when you have an opportunity like Captain America or X-Men or Planet of the Apes, you will take some of those students to work on those projects. How did that idea kind of come about? Or
well, it's I as an instructor here, students will reach out to me, and I'm really stoked and happy to mentor students, and I'll tell every student exactly what they need to do to be successful, and if they do it, they will be successful. But by and large, they don't. Some small handful have done that, and then when I went out to LA to work on a pilot or to work on a movie, and they were there, even though they were not super experienced, because I knew them and I knew that they were trainable, I'm happy to include them in the project. But it's got to be a special breed of graduate, because I'm saying I'm hiring this person and they are a reflection on me. So it can't just be because you went to Full Sail, I'm going to hire you. You have to be vetted. We have to have a relationship. I have to know you, because people hire who they know, even me. Just because we met doesn't mean that I know you. I'm willing to risk my reputation to give you an opportunity. So, when I went to LA and worked on a couple things, I was able to include some students on that. And now last year, a couple projects came to Orlando. There was a Disney film that came through, and strictly through networking, I got that call to help out on that. And because I had a handful of students that I've been working with, I was, very blessed and felt very lucky to be able to give them their first opportunity, closely monitored by me with the understanding, hey, if you fuck up, it makes me look really bad. So, that felt great, and now I'm happy to utilize my network to crack doors open for students. If I'm not working on the movie, I can't hire them on it, obviously, but I can introduce them to people that possibly could, hire them at some point. But that has, when I get to actually work with my students on set, it's really special, to see their eyes so wide because they're on here at school. They were picked by me because at school they're rock stars. And when they walk onto a set on a student project, they run the show. Now, all of a sudden, here they are in a $100 million movie, and it's big. And there's a lot of old guys walking around, and their eyes get, really big. And that's pretty fun for me to see that and watch them slowly,
serve them a piece of humble pie.
Yeah, and watch them, react to it and see. And it's cool. It's like, hey, this is what it's going to be like. So now you know.
Mm-hmm. So when those students are kind of on that opportunity and as they're building relationships with you, what are some of the do's and don'ts of like what are some things that are going to completely turn you off and what are some things that are going to be like, yeah, that's very good. Keep at it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously number one is punctuality. There's no being late.
That's in any industry.
I mean, but in entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back. And I want the students to start to be practicing that now. I don't teach a course, I teach a guest lecture in other people's courses, by design so that I can come and go, like you said, and be flexible. So, I'll give a guest lecture and students come in right when it's supposed to start or after. And then they want to come and tell me why they were late. And I don't care. It's like, here's my litmus test. If this was a Quentin Tarantino movie and you were working on it, whatever bullshit you're about to tell me about why you're late, do you think that you would tell Quentin Tarantino that? And what do you think he would say? So it starts now. And I don't know that a lot of the students really understand how important that is. I'm not judging you on your skill level because you have none, because you're brand new. Even when you graduate from here, you're brand new. So I'm not judging you on that. Your first test is, can you show up on time? And if you can't, certainly I'm not going to give you more responsibility. And that very well might be the last day you ever work with me. And I'm never going to recommend you to one of my friends if you can't even do that. Full Sail says, we take your dreams seriously. But, are you serious about it? And if you can't even bother to show up on time, then I would say, no, you're not serious about this. You're not going to be successful. So, that's obviously number one. That's test number one. Can you show up on time? And I mean, a monkey could do that. A monkey, you could set an alarm clock and a monkey will wake up and start their day, So that's the first test. And then, I don't mind, new entry-level film people making mistakes because they're doing something for the first time. That's to be expected, but not make the same mistake twice. I want people that I'm working with to carry a notepad and write things down. And, if I tell you to do something and then you screw it up because you don't remember what I said, I don't have time. If I call you over and I'm going to give you something to do, I want to see that notepad. I want to see you write it down so that I know that it's happening. It's attitude, it's body language, And again, I'm not even talking about the actual skills of filmmaking, because it's not that hard. It's just about making yourself somebody who people can tolerate for 15 hours a day. And it's body language and it's attitude and it's, making an effort to look, not like a slob or like you're going to a volleyball game. It's just little things that, wear deodorant and all that stuff. It's mostly the soft skills, that I'm looking at.
What are some of the things that people can be doing now to kind of prepare themselves, whether they're current students or they're out 5 years, 10 years, and they kind of want to make a career change, or they just helped a little budget film, do this and that, to help directing? Like, I want to get into that.
Well, while they're here, it's definitely getting experience. And, if you follow the curriculum, then you do a project here, and then you do a project here, and then you do a project there, and then you graduate. That's the curriculum. But if you recognize that every month there's a class doing a project, and if you get into that project to help out, and they always need help. Somebody, The garbage can is full. Somebody needs to take that out. Somebody needs a drink of water. Somebody needs to hold something, So I encourage my students, you need to get reps. You need to get as many reps as you can. And just doing what the curriculum is it's not good enough. Everybody does that. So how do you set yourself apart, So getting reps, and then it's the networking. I mean, that's it. It's not, it's no big, deep secret here, It's networking and making the effort to do
networking and coming back to the soft skills, showing up on time.
Yes.
Listening to what you're told.
Right.
Not always having an opinion on something.
No. When you're new, you don't have an opinion about anything.
No, not when you're new. Right. So that's kind of all the questions I have. Unless there's anything you wanted to touch base on or kind of add.
No, cool, man.
I'll put your IMDb page in the show notes. Is there any way people can follow? Do you have a website or any way people can get in touch with you?
No, I've got my personal Facebook page,
Okay.
and if there's any Full Sail students listening, lkatz@fullsail.com. Any degree program, happy to to provide guidance and networking and all that stuff. Leslie Brathwaite made a great post where he said, y'all can't say we don't tell you exactly what to do. You just have to add the hustle. So I'm happy to tell anybody that wants to hear it exactly what they need to do to be successful. They just have to add the hustle.
Mm-hmm. That's a great thing to end on.
Cool.
So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Lennon.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode with Mr. Larry Katz. I very much hope that you enjoyed my conversation with him. Again, he's worked on movies such as Pirates of the Caribbean, At World's End, X-Men First Class, Captain America, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, and many, many more. I just want to remind you as well, before we dive into next week's episode and we await the incredible conversation for next week's episode, that you should sign up to my mailing list, as it greatly helps me grow the show and notify you when new episodes are live. I would also encourage you to support me on Patreon, which will help me grow the show and provide you with better episodes. Please also leave me a 5-star rating and or review in Apple Podcasts or whichever podcast platform that you choose to listen to, because it greatly helps me grow the show and it be discovered by new listeners. And lastly, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, there is a link to the guest request form that I would encourage you to fill out or send over to your friend or family member that would be a good guest. And I will be notified and I will reach out and we will try to coordinate something to have them or you be a guest on the show. So again, thank you very much for listening and supporting the show. I really appreciate everything that you've done for me and the show. And I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Larry Katz. And we will see you next week on When Life Hands You Lemons.